Ready, go.
All right. We are live with Broads Abroad pod/broadcast. Can we call it a broadcast?
We're broadcasting Broads Abroad. This is how it works.
I think so. I mean, this whole like social distancing has made us rethink the way that we approach our podcast. And so we're attempting a screen audio /screen cast of our broad/podcast. And we actually had,
I like the slash. The slash is making me very, very motivated.
I know slashes are really motivating.
It's like 2 for 1. It's like everything's, you're getting a deal. Like with
like
all of these things that
BOGOs.
we're seeing online, we're getting a deal. Yes.
BOGOs.
Okay.
And yes,
we're getting BOGOs.
And
although our podcast is available for all.
It's true. And we're going to put this up on our podcast, but we're also going to put the video, hopefully, if it ends up staying PG, which we hope it does. But the reason why it may not is because we have invited some friends to join us. And so they're going to be jumping in here soon. We'll see them pop up one at a time. But we thought it would be kind of cool to do a podcast. And again, super spontaneous. That's sort of the theme of, oh, here comes.
But what?
Did you guys know?
Oh my God! I feel like Mr. Rogers.
What's happening? Well, Kyla was just about to introduce that we were having guests and that we're going to be popping in, and we were just about to talk about the topic of today's show. But I know we have some more guests jumping in, so.
And as we wait for them to arrive, the interesting thing about mine and Jessica's podcast thus far is that it does maintain an element of spontaneity.
It does.
In that we,
That's so surprising.
as you can see and hear.
as you guys logged in for your Wine Wednesday Zoom, and here we are having a podcast /broadcast.
It's a broadcast.
Who knew?
A broadcast podcast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it will end with Kate doing a song, I think.
Ooh.
I think we're gonna
I think.
maybe a little baby.
And
stuff.
Let it go. Let it go.
No, that is
yet,
not the
yet.
song I had in mind.
Oh, okay. I like big butts and I cannot not. Okay. We'll wait. We'll see what happens.
Because
what
the thing
happens.
is we've got to stay true to the nature of this broadcast podcast, which is all about our experiences abroad.
The nature. I thought this was the first
we're
time.
doing it.
Okay. So
Okay.
the nature, as Jessica was about to say, the nature of this Broads Abroad podcast is women abroad. And when we did our last podcast, Jessica and I did a high five, low five, where we talked about the top 5 things that keep people abroad, and also the 5 biggest challenges that and we didn't want to call them lows, but really they're kind of the hurdles and the challenges that make it hard to stay abroad.
Oh, we can give you some of those.
Exactly. That's why
and also the solutions, the kinds of things that kept you abroad despite those challenges and how we grew from them. So those are the things.
And how it almost like makes you stronger and makes you want to stay longer. And
I think you guys make this a good experience. You guys make it stronger and easier to live here.
Did she lose her headphone?
I tried to rip it out. Like, get out of here.
The trials and tribulations of broadcast podcasts.
Right. And so when we did our low 5, one of the 5 that we came up with was, and I'm just going to go right out and start with this. One of the low 5, and if you are curious what those are, just listen back. Episode 2. But
a little plug there.
But one of the low 5s was emergencies, like dealing with emergencies or really crazy stuff while overseas, while away from your families.
Welcome to the present.
Exactly. And so that's why I thought, you know what, why not unpack that one a little bit? Because we never really got a chance to do that in our last episode. I specifically kind of put that on my low 5 list because I've been abroad almost 12 years now, 11 years, I don't know, something like that. And I've experienced some pretty significant, I would say, emergency situations like ER visits and even travel emergency and whatnot. And those types of situations throw you into an entirely different realm of comfort and coping, and even like deciding or choosing to stay. Because sometimes when those situations hit, your first instinct is to go home, like go home to your home country.
Or go to your safety area. I had the opportunity live an experience with Ashley and Kate, with Ashley being in the ER.
In where? Oh, were you in the ER with us? Oh, we have Lindy and a baby.
Yeah, but like, oh, look, we've got more people. Good.
Wait, why was Jessica has been in the ER with me.
I have, and with Kate.
I've been
I mean, I feel like it's a community of ER visits. She was with me in the ER. I was with her in the ER.
So why don't you guys share with us a little bit about what that experience was? What was the like?
Mine wasn't a good
highlight,
experience.
what was the challenge? Well, just
It's
in
not
general,
supposed to be good, Kate. It's not.
But
Okay.
how did you get through it? I mean, what advice would you give to people living abroad of what worked and what didn't?
Okay, well, I can start. Unfortunately, I was having some like abdominal pain, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I had gone to our school doctor, who is a certified doctor, a couple times, and you know, we had talked over the week, but she was like, look, I need you to go get a lab done. So really, it wasn't the ER. My bad experience came with our lab technicians here, because I got an ultrasound, and she was like, okay. And again, this was Kate's really bad Spanish mixed with the technician's not so great English. But, you know, I basically said, look, if it's serious enough, call my doctor, okay, so fast forward. But anyway, so on the lab results, they basically said, look, I think there's a mass on your appendix. Also, I think there's a cyst on your ovary. But the mass on the appendix was the concern, because I thought I had appendicitis. So then later I'm texting our school doctor, and she's like, well, what did they say? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it was that serious. I told him to call you if it wasn't a big deal. And she's like, hold on. So she ended up calling the lab and then texted me right back and said, you need to go to the emergency room right now. And at the time, Ashley, who's my roommate, wasn't here. And so I just started bawling. I started freaking out because I don't speak Spanish very well. Like, that's already a very shocking, like, okay, I need to drive myself to the emergency room. So as I'm driving, I'm leaving her voice messages of panic. I'm leaving our other friends, Guy, voice messages of panic, like, somebody meet me at this emergency room. I don't even know what I'm in for. And I did. I got to the emergency room, and luckily both of them were there to meet me. And the doctor spoke English, which was very nice. And honestly, like, the situation, I was very happy that it was so thorough, because the doctor's like, look, it's not appendicitis, but we want to hold you for a couple days just to make sure. My biggest issue was the insurance kerfuffle, because that's what happened. You know, I was in the hospital for 2 days. There really was no point. I was missing school. And I basically was like, I'm leaving. And they're like, okay, well, we'll handle it with your insurance later. And unfortunately, the insurance here, I don't know. I was dealing with our broker, and it was basically, they missed a number. But long story shorter, I'm out 50,000 pesos, which again, I recognize from, you know, my own country of the United States, that would have been 50,000 US dollars. But still, that was kind of my bad experience.
Let's talk about that just for a second, though, because that's so fascinating to say that, like, it was 50,000 pesos here in Mexico, which in the States might have been $50,000, which in Canada, you would have just given your healthcare card. And so there is that element of, we're all very used to a certain type of healthcare, a certain type of paying. And so dealing with any kind of emergency situation it's not just scary because it's an emergency. It's scary because it's uncharted territory. You're like, I don't know who to call. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. And so there's that entire element. I mean, we're focusing on this topic for Mimi and Lindy, who kind of popped in during Kate's story, which is just one of many examples of times when we've experienced kind of like those hardships or those emergency situations abroad. But we are focusing on that topic today because we are kind of in one of those situations right now. I mean, I say kind of, but really, like, full in.
We are. I mean,
we're totally in it.
Yeah, living that. And I think.
Oh, Kate raised her hand. What? Someone's echo. Who's?
Yeah, I think that. But I think that's a big thing that I struggled with, the anxiety of, you know, the coronavirus. Do I go back to the States or not? And really the ultimate decision to stay in Mexico, not just, you know, we have fewer cases than the United States, but I'm fully covered
because of your work.
Like I'm fully covered here. I'm not fully covered in the United. I'm not even close to being covered in the United States. So
well, exactly. And when you're Canadian, for example, and you come from somewhere that does have healthcare, public healthcare, you lose that when you lose your residency status. And so my family again also is looking at that, like, well, in Canada we don't have healthcare. We need to live there for 6 months before we get our healthcare back and pay taxes into that system, obviously. And in Mexico, we're fully covered with our private health insurance through our employment, which is supposed to be global. But as Kate referenced, it's a nightmare wherever you are trying to deal with insurance, no matter where you are. And can I just point out how cute that little baby is? Lindy has logged on with her baby. And it may not be an emergency situation, but let's just she lost her head and her head is back. But let's just even say, like, having a baby abroad, you're going through that whole process, and pregnancy and other emergency situations that come along with pregnancy that some of us have had to deal with.
But I think all of those pieces, Kyla, I mean, you mentioned, you know, how all of us have these different challenges of being abroad and how much we rely not only on the system, but also on each other. So I think, like, just having that that community connection with the people that not only are at your school, but also that family of friends around, because these emergencies are real. They do come up. We're living this challenge right now, and being abroad, understanding what it means in, you know, COVID-19 crossing borders right now, and still working, knowing, okay, well, to what extent do I make the choice that's committing myself to the company that I'm working with, which is also the healthcare that Kate just mentioned, that, you know, we're covered under these particular, you know, policies, versus going back to home where we know it. We just know it. That's our safety net. That's where our families are. That's where we know, you know, quote unquote, know our systems, right? But at that same time, there's so much uncertainty. So how do we deal with that? And what I think is really special about what we're living right now is, we're following those recommendations and guidelines that are worldwide. We're all doing this quarantine, and all of us are finding this connection, which is an extended version of what we did in our real life, where we were together and supporting each other, physically being there for each other in hospitals when, you know, when Lindy's baby was born, and, well, both babies, obviously, but, you know, I'm just talking about, like, recent situations, and, you know, like with hospitalizations that Kate just mentioned earlier. That's not what you do. I mean, you do that for your family, and our friends are your family abroad. So I just wanted to bring that up, because I think that's a really important piece.
For me, Jessica, like, I think the low about living abroad in the emergencies is the confusion that comes along, and even the language barrier, or just using different systems. But I think for me, I've been to the emergency a couple times here, and it's the people that I've gotten to, I know, the people I've gotten to know here, and just the support that you build with your community when you're international. And I don't know if we're particularly fortunate here in Monterey, or if that's something that people everywhere are fortunate enough to have, but that really makes such a difference for our lives. And our school has also been very supportive. Anytime we've had those issues, there's a contact person that you can call and say, here's the situation, and they're available 24/7, which is just like our friends and family, which really helps a lot.
Well, and that's the case. That's the case with when you do work for an organization or a school or a business. Like, you usually do have an HR person or somebody that you can contact that helps you through that process. But then there are those situations where you maybe you end up becoming self-employed, or you don't have the HR go-to, and situations might become a little bit more stressful or intense, but then sometimes maybe your language evolves in a way that you're able to maneuver your way through those situations better. I mean, even as much as
you can communicate.
Yeah, exactly. Even as much as, like, a fender bender. I had a bit of a fender bender, and remember that. And I had 1% left on my cell phone. I had both kids in my car, and I remember calling our school's HR person, and I just literally said where I was before my phone died. And I stood on the corner on Morones Prieto, which is, like, extremely busy. And lo and behold, there he was. He showed up like 10 minutes later in his suit and tie, ready to like maneuver me through this whole situation. And he did an amazing job. And so in a lot of cases, if you work for an organization or a company or a school, and that's why I think it's important when you do go abroad to try to follow the right steps to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in these situations, you know, an organization that does provide that for you. It makes it a lot easier when you're dealing with that.
Oh no, you're so right. It makes it a lot easier in that organization. I was just really curious. I was just going to ask Lindy when she comes back.
Oh, no, Lindy, come back.
Yeah. Yeah, I she is. Lindy, about your experience. I mean, you had, you know, babies here. Can you just share with us a little bit about what that was like being a foreigner and also at the time not working for a school system? So can you just share with us a little bit about what worked and didn't work in your experience?
Yeah, sorry about my dog. No.
I love it.
And I love how Lindy was like literally messaging us being like, oh, you guys are online, I'm going to join the chat. And then she joins us and we're like, hey, podcast. Surprise.
Yeah, so I live here. I'm not working in the school, but my husband is, as you guys all know. But the one thing that came to my mind when you guys were talking about emergency situations and being in another country, for my time at the hospital was the hardest part was when I was not, like, I had a C-section with my first baby, and I was drugged up, obviously, to deal with the pain. And when the nurses would come in, some nurses spoke English, but most of them didn't. When they came in, I could not communicate with them at all. It was super frustrating.
To bounce off of Lindy's point, when I was admitted, I went almost 36 hours without food because I didn't realize I was supposed to call myself to place an order. You know, in the United States, they just bring you food. It was until like I got visitors and, you know, Ashley had called, but it was my vice principal who came and visited me, and Jessica as well. She came and visited me, but my vice principal came and I was like, I'm literally dying. They won't feed me. I thought they were like just against me. And she picked up the phone and was like, what is going on here? And they were like, oh, she never called. Okay, well, you know that.
Why would you know that?
But that Kate is like the most perfect example of a tiny little detail that you might miss.
Well, and it's so interesting how many people that we encounter on a day-to-day that do speak bilingually, and then when you're in hospitals or when you're in the visa office or you're in places that you would that's where you would expect them to hire. And it's so fascinating that you get there and you're like,
like gas attendants seem to speak more English than the nurses sometimes, and I'm like,
them for the work they do, but it is really challenging for us.
Oh no, I don't have that vocabulary in my back pocket of like,
and even if you think you're successable with language, the moment you're in one of those situations, you lose all your vocabulary.
And because it's an emergency situation, I mean, you're adrenaline
and you're drugged.
And Lindy's drugged, like being cut open.
What about you, Mimi? What experience have you had?
With you,
Oh, hi, Chaz.
Chaz, we're in a broadcast podcast, por favor.
Men on our broadcast. Broadcast podcast. Mimi, have you had situations like that?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, no, I'm just wondering if you had an emergency situation that you can kind of share what your experience was and how it was solved or what your challenges were.
I'm lucky enough that I haven't had to go to the hospital or do any of that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. But luckily, I mean, Chaz's brother is a doctor, so whenever I need anything, I just call him.
There you go. So it is the family. It goes back to that family and friends. The friends you create to be your family.
And it also goes back to like that we're all here in different statuses. I mean, Mimi is married to somebody from here in Mexico. Mimi's from Canada, married to someone from Mexico. And so her situation might look a little bit different. Lindy is here, married to another expat, and they had their 2 children here. I moved here to Mexico with 2 children that I had in Korea. Like everybody's kind of in a different situation.
Wait, the other three of us are very strong single ladies
Very
that
strong.
need
Yeah,
all
you
that.
gotta get over that.
I
You don't have to,
mean,
like,
wait
slide
a
over
second.
it.
I was waiting for our demographic to be mentioned, and then the other
She
three
just
are
glazed over
strong,
that.
independent
Kyla.
ladies.
It was
Thank
like,
you.
oh, we're not going to talk about that
We don't wanna
because
hurt
Like they're
single
not
lady's
those hermits. Those
You are anything but a hermit. In fact,
No,
Kate, I truly feel like my most fun nights are when I go out with all my single lady friends, like to Elton's karaoke, jamioke.
Oh.
I'm not sure what to call it
there
exactly.
you go.
Well,
That's
you
not
turned it
what I
into
was.
karaoke. It was a piano
It's not
bar, but you
karaoke.
turned it into karaoke. You were
I'm
like,
sorry. I may
take that mic. Thank you.
I might turn this podcast into karaoke. Shall
Oh,
we?
God.
No.
It was a
Okay.
promise on the last episode that would happen.
It was.
Oh, that was just the baby floating and no Lindy, and that freaked me out so much.
That happens. But I do love that we have a baby on this podcast because it is Broads Abroad, and we've got roommates, we've got friends, we've got professionals, we've got moms, we've got teachers, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got this realm of people, of women that live abroad and tackle life and work and friendship and family and all of these different things. And what's amazing is you look at the five of us even, and we're only a small handful of our community, but we rely on each other so much. And
As everyone's counting and going 5.
sorry, 5. There's 5.
Like 7.
There's 5 windows. I agree. There's 5 windows. I can see how that would kind of
There's actually
shift
seven.
Kyla's
Kyla.
not a math teacher. Let's just.
That is not a
Okay,
math concept. Let's
Okay,
be
wait.
clear.
Wait, speaking of teaching, let's just address the fact that so we started we did start this episode talking about like the uniqueness of coronavirus, and all of us right now, we were in just a group hangout
Emergency situation.
for just to socialize because we're all practicing social distancing as we all should be.
Except for those two.
Yeah, but those two live together, so that's
We live
together.
We can't help it. Look at that.
But yeah, are you going to yell the baby?
And
The baby
that
with
keeps
her mom.
disappearing.
Sierra, why are you not social distancing? You are way too
Yes,
close to your mom
Sierra,
right now.
geez.
But
Yeah, Jessica, I might say, why are you not social distancing? But
I will just honestly say though, like the challenge for me personally, being a mom and a teacher right now during this time, and shifting back and forth from my own house with my screen, like I have literally learned how to use, and I'm a pretty avid, forward-thinking, innovative teacher, but I swear I have learned more in the past week than ever before. And not only
like
have
how
I
to
learned
put
more,
your sweater on.
like how to put my sweater on really fast when students are logging in because I'm wearing tank tops.
I just
Because
have to
can I just say
Kyla,
it's 37 degrees here right now.
so
It's
hot.
And so I'm in a
It is
tank
hot.
top most days. And then my students log in like every hour and I'm like, and I have to throw a sweater on. But I will say, like, not only have I learned a gazillion new platforms and ways to differentiate and like refresh my pedagogy as an educator, and also as a singer, I'm reconnecting with musician friends and I'm super excited about that. But also I'm learning about how to be a better or maybe worse parent. I haven't decided yet. We're in week 1, but homeschooling my own children while trying to maneuver my way through distance learning with my students, and also tap into, not putting too much pressure on myself to hit all of my personal goals in this time that I have. I mean, it's a lot. And so I'm testing myself as a parent with my own kids with regards to my expectations of them and my patience with them and all of that. So I will say that I think all of us are experiencing new challenges through this process. And I think that there's something to be said, and I don't want to lessen anybody else's experience, but there is very much something to be said about going through this when you are not in the presence of your family and your home community. There's something really unique about that experience, about connecting online, and people are saying, when are you coming home? We want you here, we want you safe. And you're like, but I am home and I am safe. and there's like a bit of a push and a pull, and I find that it's really telling about the strength of our own community and the comfort we feel in what we call home, and also B, the pull home to your home country that comes more in an emergency situation. Like Lindy, you were talking about a C-section that you weren't planning on. Kate, you were talking about, thinking that you had something on your appendix and going to the emergency room, and that fear. I mean, before my son was born, my first child, I experienced a miscarriage in Korea. And my first inclination, my first instinct was to be on a plane home. Like, I was like, I'm going home. I can't have a baby here, but I should be able to have a baby in Canada.
And I think it's any emergency situation.
Exactly.
I mean, the appendectomy, even right now, the coronavirus, I mean, I literally had a bit of an anxiety attack. I mean, Ashley and a bunch of people had to talk me off a ledge, but last Friday, I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. And it was that feeling of being trapped.
Yeah.
Even though if we are not able to get to our house right now, we're in a safer spot. But I think it's any emergency situation people don't understand, and we're naturally very independent people. The lifestyle we've chosen as international teachers, I think we're very independent, but that doesn't mean that, I think anybody in an emergency situation, you want to be around your family, but you guys are our family. Like, we have developed our own secondary family, and that's what I don't think our primary families understand, is that, like you were saying, Kyla, they're like, we want you home. And it's like, but I have a support system. This is my support system. And sometimes we need to tell ourselves that this is our family. Like, we don't hug, but we're pretty much sisters. And we have each other for emergency situations.
I don't hug my
We
sister
don't.
either.
We don't hug. It's a very straight. We're like, we'll hug everybody, and then we'll get to each other, and we're like, see you at home.
But
Okay.
I also don't hug my sister, so it's not.
Yeah,
it's
we're just like, see you home. All right.
Well, exactly, but that's the thing, is your relationships with everybody are different and unique, as they would be at home, but there is this tug and this push and pull, and you guys keep touching on, Kate, like you've mentioned a few times, the importance of community. And when Jessica and I did our high five, low five episode, that was both of our number one high five was community.
It totally resonated.
It really is, because without that number one high of community and a circle and a network, however you might shape that, and you might have a few different pockets where you fit in and where you shape that, and that's fine. But those pockets that you find community within are really what allow you to endure and to push through the challenges and turn those challenges into successes. And I think right now this coronavirus is one more challenge. So I think right now, I think we should sort of pause or end this episode, but I want everyone to just take a moment and think of like maybe one word that resonates with you with regards to how you're pulling through or pushing through this particular experience or any experience that you've been through. Think of maybe a word or a phrase that you might want to share with our listeners / watchers. Like we are going to post this, you guys, like FYI, tell Chaz, Mimi, tell Chaz he is going to be on our Broads Abroad.
Live. That's
and
right.
like, oh yes.
Right. You guys were
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Family and during the whole coronavirus. So last Saturday, I flew to Cancun. It was a beautiful family vacation with my mother, my sisters, all of my nieces and nephews, and it just seemed like that week the whole world changed. Coronavirus became a mysterious thing. And on my way there, I had a panic attack on the airplane. I was freaking out because my daughter, 3-year-old, cannot stop touching everything. We were in the bathroom. She was touching things with her mouth.
Oh my God. Use that meme that was like, that GIF.
Anyway, once I got with my family, I thought I would be more calm because I'm with my mother, my sisters, everybody. It's my family. But my husband was back here in Monterey, and this is where my home is. I felt completely detached, and I don't know, it was like a feeling of insecurity. I guess. And so just to like reiterate how great this community is, and I know it was being away from my husband in our little family unit, but there was something about like not being in our home, not being back here, that I felt completely unsettled. And so it didn't take it. Well, I ended up getting a flight back earlier than expected because I just couldn't handle it. Was just insane. The whole world was shutting down.
Absolutely.
And it was amazing, Lindy,
Well,
like the way that you and your family talked through that crisis, and you were all there, and they also were trying to make their way back home and deciding, do we go early? How do we, because you were all in the air and like amidst traveling when this all kind of happened.
Yeah, it just kind of blew up pretty much when we all landed there. And and it was supposed to be a beautiful vacation at the beach. It was going to be amazing. But no, nobody could really enjoy it.
And now your baby keeps losing her head. So pretty much.
Okay,
There
for
you
the
go.
listeners out there, we're talking about the virtual piece.
The virtual piece, the visual is crazy. If you're not watching and you're just listening, that won't make any sense.
No, but I think that's so important what you mentioned, Lindy, is that I really, as I was listening to you and you were sharing how much you valued that, your family unit and coming back here, that this community is essential to be successful living abroad, especially in these kinds of unprecedented, because that's what it is, kind of emergency. No one has a formula for this. There's no, there's no steps of this is what you do and this what doesn't work as well. We're building the plane as we're flying it. So I feel that that's a challenge, but also really exciting because of the family community that we have. We're not desperate to go back. As much as we miss home, we all know that this is temporary. It's something that will pass, and what gets us through it is conversations like this. We're able to connect, visually using the technology tools that are available to us. And more importantly, we have people to connect to because we've created those relationships. So
I was even
important.
I was kind of weary today I've visited a few people through this process, but I at first kind of thought that a virtual dinner was kind of a funny idea, but it really, like, it feels warming to even just have conversations again and to talk to everyone about their experience. I didn't really value that as much as I thought I would. So it's
and now this will happen every week.
And how fun is it that we turned your virtual dinner into Jessica and I were planning on doing our podcast?
Right. I know.
Like,
there you go.
Hey.
And here we are.
And here we are, exactly.
And so going back to your message, Kyla, you're sharing with us that you're looking what phrase or what word, and I think that's a really great strong piece to kind of bring this section together. What are some of the things that you guys are thinking about? What would be a word or a phrase that would bring us together?
I mean, I think you hit it. I think it's that community, that secondary family for me. But I mean, when you said say a word, I'm like, that's just it. It's having that community, having that secondary family, no matter where you go. It's so important to develop those relationships where you feel comfortable. And that can be a mentor-mentee, that can be a sister, brother, that can be any kind of relationship, but you need a support system. That's
absolutely.
They say that the family choose, right?
That what? Sorry, again?
They say that the friends that you are with are the family you choose.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think we've all chosen very well.
Yeah,
Mimi?
we have. Yeah, what would you say?
because we chose each other. Nice one, Kyla.
Well, I mean, like, we can compliment our group like that. It is Wine Wednesday after all. Okay, Mimi? Mimi, do you have a phrase?
Well, actually, it was, Well, actually, I feel like exactly home is where you are with the people that you love. Like, I was in Canada
recently.
2 weeks ago, and my mom was just like, no, you need to get back with Chaz. Like, Chaz is your family now. I mean, he is. So even though like all of this crazy stuff was happening, I was like, I'm still like, I'm home, but I'm not home. If Chaz was with me, I would be home. So it depends on who you're with and where you are.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I think exactly being home is with the people that you love and the people that you choose.
And home develops an entirely new meaning when you live abroad.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. Ashley or Lindy?
I can go. What I was thinking about was security, which sounds like a strange word, but
You have a baby. It's a pretty important word. You have a baby and a 3-year-old.
Yeah, I just felt very like insecure. Like just I didn't feel safe when I wasn't back here. And I mean, that has to do with my small family unit, but it also has to do with our community and how like we can count on each other for anything. Although it's a different country that we didn't grow up in. Oh. But yeah, we know that we're all here together.
Oh, yeah. No, Sierra.
We love you too.
Oh, it's sad. I know. Oh, she's gone again. Decapitated.
She's like,
Again,
Mom.
it is just on the background.
Okay. Ashley?
And I feel like I'm just reiterating the same thing. I know that for me, through all these emergencies and situations, it's been an adventure going through all of it with everyone. And I think keeping it, finding a community that can keep you positive and making sure that you're getting through the situation as best as you can is so important. And I really appreciate that about all of you guys. And we've had a lot of anxiety and stress, and we always find a way to make sure we all are seeing the bright side and getting through it the best we can. So
yes, absolutely.
I would say hope.
Yeah.
I would say hope.
Yeah. Hope.
Yeah.
That word really came to my mind and resonated as we were talking about community and family and so on. And none of us focused on financial disparity, those kinds of challenges. I mean, I think that at the end of it, that community sense, but more moving forward, what kind of ties this episode about what is our takeaway from living abroad in an emergency situation? And to be honest, because of the choices all of us have made, I would say that I'm left with the word hope. What about you?
I like that. I was thinking, just because of a few of the things that I mentioned with regards to this emergency or this, I guess, strange scenario that we're in globally, and also previous ones that I've encountered both individually through pregnancy and as a mom, I would really say one for me is 2 words that stand out would be resiliency and agility, like just rolling with the punches and adapting to those things, and also using those things like, say, language barriers in an ER room as an opportunity to grow in your own understanding about the way the world works, about the way that other people have to deal with those changes and those challenges when they come to, say, the country you're from, and the challenges that other people face and perspective and all those things. So just that ability to be agile, to be flexible, to learn and find support as you can, and to gain perspective when you can, I think is really important. So yeah, I would say resiliency and agility are my key words that I would take from that.
I like them. I think that's a great place to pause this episode and be able to build on the next. I think that we've touched on a lot of really key, important points about what it means and what challenges you face living abroad, and as a woman living abroad, and what the kind of connection is all about. And I think that we hit it. So that was,
we did. And we didn't really even talk much about work, which is crazy, because that usually ends up being, I know. Well done, people.
Next broadcast, we'll be a part of that one too.
Oh, I like that we're calling it a podcast broadcast, Broads Abroad podcast broadcast. This is getting to be a bit of a mouthful.
We're already branching.
You know what? Talking about spontaneity and agility, like, thank you, ladies. Like, Lindy, I don't even think you and Sierra knew in your forest background that you were going to be
Her baby's got no head. I'm very disturbed.
Again, the virtual reality for those of us.
But you know what, guys? Thank you for your willingness. Like, this started as a little bit of a hangout just for fun, and then Jessica and I said, let's do this, and you guys did. And in the nature of Broads Abroad, we just went with it and talked about what we felt was important. So thank you, ladies, for joining us.
Thank you for a great, successful episode 3, and we look forward to the next.
Aww.
Now we bust out the theme
Thanks,
song.
ladies, for doing that.
Oh, here's the thing. So Kate, you promised you would sing. I love big.
I thought that was not appropriate, so I chose not to sing that song.
All right, okay.
We're gonna
We'll
go
save that for another one. Okay.
Family.
There you go.
All right.
I got all my sisters with
me.
me. Our family.
All right. Love you guys. Mwah.
Love you.